You think you're that big down there? You won't even last around, Mummy's boy.
It's all there.
Good. Pleasure doing business with you.
The bass is heavy. Lights flicker. Glasses clink. Then, silence. A voice, sharp and fearless, cuts through the room like a blade through silk. The kind of voice that doesn't ask permission to be heard, it simply speaks, and the air rearranges itself around it. You think you're that big down there? The music dies instantly, not on a cue, not on a count, but the way music dies when something more powerful than sound fills a room. Men who have built entire careers on never showing fear suddenly stop breathing. Bodyguards with hands like sledgehammers reach instinctively for what's underneath their jackets. Because seated in the shadows, still as a stone idol, is a man whose name alone shuts down entire streets in Seoul, in Busan, in places where power is measured not in titles but in silences. His name is Kang Junho. And a dancer, bold, unashamed, magnificent in her defiance, just challenged him in front of everyone. But here's the twist. He doesn't reach for his phone. He doesn't signal his men. He doesn't narrow his eyes in the way that has made grown men weep in parking garages at 2 in the morning. He smiles. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this isn't just a story. It's a lesson on power, fear, and what happens when the wrong person refuses to be intimidated. Stay till the end. The club isn't just a club. Places like this never are. It is a cathedral of convenience, where politicians who can't meet in daylight meet in darkness, where businessmen who shake hands in boardrooms seal different kinds of deals on velvet sofas, where money changes ownership without ever touching a bank. The music is loud enough to swallow words but quiet enough that the right ears still catch them. The lighting is designed not for aesthetics but for deniability. Kang Junho owns a table at the very back, where 2 walls meet, and his back is never exposed. He arrives before anyone important and leaves after everyone has forgotten to look. He doesn't hold court. He doesn't need to. Attention is not something he demands, it gravitates toward him the way water finds the lowest point. Naturally. Inevitably. And then there is Yemi. She owns the stage the way tides own shorelines, not aggressively but absolutely. She is not performing for desperation or survival, though both would be understandable. She performs with the quiet authority of someone who has chosen to be seen, and knows the precise difference between that and needing to be seen. Every movement she makes says, I am here because I decided to be. Not because I had to. Not because someone permitted it. She notices him not because he is loud, he is the least loud person in the building. She notices him because of what surrounds him, the careful radius that other people maintain, the way eyes flicker toward him, and just as quickly away, the way even the most confident men in expensive suits seem to involuntarily straighten their spines when they pass within 10 feet of his table. That kind of attention tells you everything. Backstage, the whispers move faster than any Wi-Fi signal. Don't look at him. A junior hostess, barely 3 weeks on the job, hissing it to anyone who will listen. Don't talk to him. One of the senior dancers, a woman who has been in this industry long enough to know which rules are written in policy, and which are written in consequences. Don't exist near him. Nobody even remembers who said this first. It has become ambient knowledge, absorbed through the walls. Yemi hears all of it. She processes it the way she processes most warnings in her life, with curiosity rather than compliance. She has spent her whole life being told what not to do by people who confuse caution with wisdom. Don't wear that. Don't speak like that. Don't take up that much space. Don't be that much. She has learned to evaluate fear-based instructions the way a jeweler evaluates gemstones, by holding them up to the light and seeing whether they are actually precious or merely cut to look that way. When their eyes meet across the room, there is a moment that neither of them will entirely be able to explain afterward. There is no fear in her gaze. Not the careful blankness of someone suppressing fear, not the rigid neutrality of someone performing calm. There is genuine curiosity. And underneath it, readable only to someone paying very close attention, challenge. She has seen powerful men before. She has navigated the particular geography of rooms where power sits heavy in the air. But something about the specific quality of the silence around this man makes her want to understand it rather than avoid it. And so she says it. She says it clearly enough that the nearest table goes still. Clearly enough that a cocktail glass pauses halfway to a mouth and doesn't complete its journey. Clearly enough that 3 separate conversations simply stop mid-sentence and don't resume. The room doesn't freeze because of what she said. The words themselves aren't extraordinary. It freezes because she said it to him. The shift happens in layers. First, the bodyguards. The 2 closest to Junho move in the subtle, practiced way of men trained never to look like they're moving until they already have. Hands slide to specific places beneath jackets. Feet adjust weight distribution. Eyes do rapid environmental sweeps. Second, the room. The invisible social organism that any gathering of people becomes registers the change in atmospheric pressure and contracts. Conversations don't stop, they shift. Bodies angle differently. Anyone with any sense of self-preservation begins calculating the distance to exits. Third, and this is the one that matters, Junho himself. He raises 1 finger. Not 2. Not a gesture. 1 finger, slightly elevated from the arm of his chair, and everything stops. The bodyguards settle. The room exhales, though not fully, there is still the sense of a breath being held just below the surface. He looks at her. Not the way men usually look at women in clubs, not with evaluation or appetite, or the particular dismissiveness of someone who has already sorted her into a category. He looks at her the way a scientist might look at a phenomenon that doesn't conform to any existing model. She is a puzzle. In his experience, and his experience is extensive, built across 2 decades of operating in spaces where being misjudged is a survival error, people behave predictably around him. They perform. They calculate. They are always doing something with the fact of who he is. Using it, navigating it, being crushed by it. She is not doing any of those things. The smile that appears at the corner of his mouth is not amusement. It is something rarer and in its own way, more dangerous. It is interest. She is escorted, not violently, which is its own kind of message, to a private room beyond a door that most people in the building don't know exists. No music here. No audience. No ambient noise of other lives being lived in close proximity to provide cover. The room is furnished with the particular precision of someone who respects quality without needing to display it. 2 chairs. A low table. A single lamp. Curtains drawn. Just her. And him. And the specific weight of a moment that could go in any direction. He doesn't pace. He doesn't loom. He sits with the unhurried stillness of a man who has never once in his adult life needed to demonstrate urgency to establish dominance. He considers her the way he considers everything, carefully, completely, without rushing to a conclusion. His first questions are simple. Disarmingly so. Why? Do you know who I am? Or do you simply not care? There is a 4th question beneath the 3 spoken ones, hovering unasked in the space between them. Are you playing something I don't understand yet? Is this a strategy? Her answers are as steady as her voice was in the main room. She doesn't perform steadiness, it lives in her naturally, the product not of fearlessness, exactly, but of a long relationship with her own values. She knows what she is. She knows what she won't compromise. That knowledge functions like ballast. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't explain herself into smallness. I don't shrink, she says, for anyone. Not for room temperature. Not for reputation. Not for you. There is a long pause. He has been in thousands of negotiations. He has sat across from people who had everything to lose and people who had already lost everything. He has heard every possible variation on the language of power, supplication, desperation, and bravado. He cannot immediately identify which category this is. That alone is worth something. For the first time in a very long time, someone in this chair is speaking to him without calculation. Without strategy. She is simply telling him the truth of who she is, as if that truth is sufficient. It occurs to him that it might be. The conversation unfolds over the following hour in ways that neither of them expected. He is not, it turns out, only asking about tonight. He has people whose entire professional purpose is knowing things, and in the time between her words in the main room, and her arrival in this one, certain information has been assembled. Patterns have been identified. The club, she learns gradually, is not simply a place of entertainment. It is a node in a network, a location through which money moves, through which information flows, through which the invisible infrastructure of significant parts of the city's operation passes unremarked. And the city itself, she begins to understand, is more quietly shaped by his presence than most of its inhabitants will ever know. Not through overt force, that is for people who haven't yet learned that overt force is inefficient, but through the particular leverage that comes from knowing where the pressure points are and choosing, mostly, not to press them. What she is not prepared for is the mirror he holds up to her own life. The audition she didn't get 3 years ago, despite the panel's clear initial interest. The venue that abruptly stopped booking her without explanation. The opportunities that seemed to materialize and then dissolve at the threshold of becoming real. She had attributed these to the ordinary cruelties of an industry that chews through talent, to bad luck, to timing. She is now being given cause to reconsider. Their worlds have not been separate. They have been adjacent, overlapping in places she never thought to examine. She has been moving through a landscape that his presence has partially shaped, without either of them being aware of the other until tonight. It is not a comfortable feeling. But discomfort, she has long understood, is frequently where the important information lives. The offer, when it comes, is structured with the precision of someone who has made many offers and understands exactly which ones are refused. Access to rooms, to people, to possibilities that the ordinary momentum of a career would never carry her toward. Money. Not a salary, not a wage, a number of a different category altogether, the kind that changes the fundamental material conditions of a life. Protection. The word hangs in the air with particular weight given everything she now understands about what it means in this specific context. Power. The ambient, unspoken kind, the kind that walks ahead of you and adjusts the room before you enter it. Step into my world, he says, with the quiet certainty of someone who is unaccustomed to having offers declined, and you will never struggle again. She listens to every word. She does not dismiss it. She does not perform outrage or fear or flattered confusion. She receives it seriously, because it is serious, and because he deserves the respect of being taken at his word. But under the explicit content of the offer, she hears something else. Something that is not said but is present in every syllable. She hears, "You will never be free again." She understands that these are not always different things, that for some people, security and constraint are so thoroughly entwined that separating them would require dismantling the structure of their life entirely. She doesn't judge those people. She has been close enough to nothing to understand the particular gravity of being offered something. But she also knows herself. She has spent too long building the specific architecture of who she is to trade it for a more comfortable cage. She has made peace, at various difficult points in her life, with the cost of being herself, and that peace is not something she is willing to sell, regardless of the price offered. She pauses. She looks at him clearly. "No," she says. "But thank you for asking." In the weeks that follow, their paths continue to cross in ways that feel less like coincidence and more like consequence. She sees his world from angles that most people never access, and what she sees is not what she expected. She expected iron. She finds tension. The elaborate, exhausting performance of a particular kind of strength, the kind that must be continuously demonstrated to remain credible. Men who obey with their bodies while resisting with everything else. Loyalty that is not loyalty at all but the behavioral output of carefully calibrated fear. The machinery of his empire runs efficiently, but it runs on a fuel that cannot be replenished, on the willingness of people to continue choosing the certainty of obedience over the uncertainty of alternatives. And then she looks at her own life. She has very little by comparison. The material calculus is not even close. But she answers to no one. Her decisions are her own. When she walks into a room, the person who walks out will still be the same person, not negotiated down, not adjusted for palatability, not incrementally reduced by the compound interest of small compromises. That difference, she thinks, That is the thing that cannot be purchased. He begins to notice it too. Not immediately, not all at once, but with the gradual recognition of someone whose model of power is being quietly but persistently challenged by proximity to a different model entirely. She has nothing he can offer. Which means she is, in every meaningful sense, beyond his reach. And beyond his reach means beyond his ability to calculate. And that is a kind of freedom he has never figured out how to buy, because it cannot be bought. The betrayal, when it comes, arrives from inside his circle, which is where all the important betrayals come from, in any system built on fear rather than trust. One of his lieutenants, a man who has spent years calculating angles and waiting for the right leverage, identifies Yemi as the path of least resistance. An outsider. A civilian. A woman with no protection and no resources. Something to use, in the logic of someone who sees people as instruments. He underestimates her on every count. She doesn't panic when the situation begins to tighten around her. Panic is the mind trying to outrun itself, and she has spent enough time with her own thoughts to know that speed is rarely the answer when precision is what the moment requires. She goes still instead, not paralyzed but gathered. Present. Reading everything. She thinks about what she knows. About the architecture of the situation, who benefits from which outcomes, where the pressure points actually are versus where they appear to be. She has been paying attention for weeks, absorbing more than anyone realized, because no one thought to account for the possibility that she was paying attention at all. She moves carefully. She doesn't try to fight the machine, she looks for the places where the machine has not anticipated her. The situation escalates. External pressures compound. Things that were stable become unstable with the particular speed of systems in which trust has been replaced by calculation. But she doesn't spiral. The world around her does, she remains the fixed point. She has been here before, in different configurations. Pressure is not new to her. Uncertainty is not new to her. She knows how to find the floor. Backhand index pointing right. If this story shifted how you see fear, confidence, or power, share it with someone who needs that reminder right now. And follow this channel for more stories that don't just entertain, but transform how you think.